Mr. Moderator and fellow town meeting members, my name is Rick Zimbone. I am a town meeting member from Precinct H and a member of the Community Preservation Committee. I am appearing here before you to present for your consideration Article 15, which seeks town meeting approval to appropriate the estimated fiscal year 2023 Community Preservation Fund revenues and to allocate them pursuant to the requirements of the Community Preservation Act. A summary of this article is provided in your warrant. Before discussing the article in detail, let me provide some background. The Community Preservation Committee is responsible for the implementation of the town's Community Preservation Plan pursuant to the requirements of the Community Preservation Act, also known as the CPA. The CPA is a funding mechanism for cities and towns to award grants to applicants to support community housing, the preservation of historic resources, the acquisition and preservation of open space, and the restoration and investment in recreational resources. There are two sources of Community Preservation Act funds. The first source of funds comes from property tax surcharge receipts. Needham adopted the Community Preservation Act in 2004. As adopted, Needham residents are billed a 2% surcharge annually on property taxes after the first $100,000 valuation. In fiscal year 2023, the period from July 1st of 2022 through June 30th of 2023, it is estimated that Needham will receive $3,094,000 in property tax surcharges dedicated to CPA. The second source of funds is the Commonwealth's Community Preservation Fund. As a participating town, Needham receives a distribution from the Massachusetts Community Preservation Trust Fund. The Community Preservation Trust Fund has a complex distribution formula based upon the number of communities participating and their respective local surcharges. The estimated CPA match for fiscal year 23 will be 20% of the prior year's qualifying tax receipts. Consequently, the state CPA Trust Fund distribution for fiscal year 2023 is estimated to be $585,000. Combining these two sources of revenue, the estimated fiscal year 2023 Community Preservation Act Fund revenues total $3,679,000. The Community Preservation Act mandates that annually at least 10% of property tax surcharges plus state distribution funds be spent on actual projects or be allocated for future projects in three specific CPA reserves: community housing, open space, and historic resources. The remainder of the funds, minus funds allocated for administrative expenses, is placed in an annual reserve fund which can only be used for projects in these three areas and/or for qualifying recreational projects. In prior years, Needham's Community Preservation Committee has elected to appropriate 11% of the estimated receipts for each special reserve category to ensure that the town stays compliant with the mandate. Using this formula, the required reserves, estimated 11%, would be $404,700 for each of the community housing, historic resources reserve, and open space. The required annual appropriation for historic resources is part of the payment for the historic service debt service on Town Hall Historic Reservation, which town meeting approved as part of the budget article earlier in this town's meeting. For fiscal year 2023, the debt service requirement of $376,650 for the town hall is less than the required reserve estimate of 11% for historic resources. The difference of $28,050 will be allocated into the historic resource reserves. Once again this year, the CPC has elected to appropriate 22% of the estimated receipts for Community Housing Reserve, or a total of $809,400. The CPC is basing this recommendation on the anticipated request for funding from the Needham Housing Authority to expand the number of affordable housing units in the town. Referring to your warrant article, you will note the recommended appropriation for the estimated fiscal year 2023 CPA receipts. Those appropriations total $2,709,458. The balance of slightly less than $1 million that was appropriated earlier as part of the town's budget article to fund the debt service requirement of the historic reservation of Town Hall and for the construction of the Rosemary Recreation Complex. Let me conclude by asking town meeting members for their approval of Article 15 and the recommended allocation for the community preservation funds as described in your warrant. Thank you very much.